Welcome back to KO with Kyle. I'm your host, Kyle. Today we recap this past weekend's August 8th fight between Derek Lewis and Oleinik, and all the other fights on the main card and prelims. Later in the episode, we'll also be talking about future and past fights, about fight announcements and upcoming events. Alright, now let's get into it. Starting off the Lewis versus Oleinik fight night, we had Beneil Dariush versus Scott Holtzman at lightweight. I had Beneil Dariush going into this one. Scott Holtzman had a pretty impressive record as well, so I knew it was going to be a close fight. There was a couple early eye pokes, which kind of slowed the action. Dariush got in on an early single leg attempt, and it was kind of back and forth. Then a knee from Dariush rocked Holtzman. It almost knocked him out. The fight continued a bit, and Dariush just finished it with that spinning back fist. It was kind of the forearm that hit him, a mix between a spinning elbow and a spinning back fist, but kind of hit him right in the middle in the forearm. And that finished it, and which was an exciting win. I'm sure he would have got performance of the night had he not missed weight. That's why he didn't get the bonus on this one. It was a really good performance by Dariush. He was number 14 going into this, so hopefully he'll get a big fight after this one. Love to see him against a top 10 guy. I think they almost can't avoid him at this point. So good on Beneil Dariush. I'd like to see more of Scott Holtzman. Maybe I could see him versus the lightweight winner of the prelim fight, which I'll get into later. But either way, there'll be more fights for Scott Holtzman, and good on Dariush. Moving on to the female bantamweight fight, it was Yana Kunitskaya versus Yulia Stoliarenko, and just right out of the gate, Kunitskaya was just smothering her with wrestling, getting her up against the cage, getting double underhooks, controlling the body, making sure that Stoliarenko just couldn't get any shots off whatsoever. Stoliarenko got her nose bloodied in the dirty boxing exchanges. Kunitskaya was throwing knees to the body in the Thai clinch. And then that was pretty much the story of round one. And round two got tied up against the cage again right away. The wrestling from Kunitskaya was kind of controlling the narrative. Stoliarenko just couldn't get off the cage. She just couldn't get her attacks off, so she kind of transitioned as an armbar specialist into trying to just pull guard and go after armbar attempts, go after submission attempts, because standing up against the cage in the dirty boxing clinch of Kunitskaya was really not working for her. So you started to see her pull guard. In round two, Stoliarenko had an armbar attempt. She was in on it pretty close. She kind of ran out of time. And the round saved Kunitskaya. And going into the third round, again, just clinch right away, grappling, put up against the cage. This time, Stoliarenko jumps into guard, pulls guard, they get down on the back, but it's up against the cage, and she doesn't get a submission. It's just kind of like a ground and pound win, and just a grinding out victory for Kunitskaya, who gets the unanimous decision. And I picked that fight as well, and picked it by decision. Had you made that bet, maybe a parlay, you would have made some money with that one for sure. Moving on to the middleweight bout, it was Darren the Dentist Stewart versus Maki Coconut Bombs Pitolo. Darren Stewart was the favorite going into this one. Like I said, he was super ripped. He just looks really great at that weight class. He was controlling the center of the octagon, Darren Stewart, at the beginning. They weren't fighting very much, not engaging. Pitolo was circling away, kind of an early feeling out process for both guys. They started to throw about a minute in, I would say, started to throw more significant strikes, trading, kind of unloading little combos when they would get in close enough to striking range. Kind of separated a little bit. Maki started to go for a little bit of grappling. He got in on a takedown. He was down, his head down, in on the legs, trying to he did get the takedown, but Stewart quickly grabbed his neck for the guillotine choke. He got it in really deep. Pitolo was not able to get out of it, and early into round 1, Darren Stewart finished that one with a guillotine choke. It was a performance of the night. It was the only fight on the main card that got a performance of the night, but good job for Darren Stewart. There's only a lot of fun fights for him at 185, so it's great to see him as a contender. And Maki Pitolo can really strike, and he's dangerous too, so I'm sure he'll be back. I'm not sure if he'll stay at the weight class, but I'm sure he can fight. Like if he fought a Weidman per se, Weidman is not the best striking, so I'm not sure how that would go down, but just throwing that out there. Weidman did end up winning, which we'll get into next, but Pitolo, he has more fights coming. He is a striker and a KO specialist, so we'll see more highlight reels from him, I'm sure. Moving on to the co-main event, it was Omari Akhmedov, the Wolverine, versus Chris Weidman at 185 this time. He had jumped back up to light heavyweight, lost, and then jumped back down to middleweight. And it looked like a good weight class for him in this fight. Weidman tried to go straight into his wrestling early on. He shot for an early single leg takedown, didn't get the takedown. Then he started to use some high kicks and kicks to the head to try to maintain or establish some distance. And kind of even in the grappling exchanges, and Weidman started to get a couple trips, which led to some takedowns. It was really all wrestling from Weidman. He would throw some jabs with his left. He would do the high kicks, like I said, occasionally, and he was going at shooting attempt after an attempt on a takedown. So he really focused on his grappling, his wrestling in this match, and he had the advantage. He was able to get Akhmedov down several times. At the end of round 1, Weidman was doing elbows from the half guard position. In round 2, Akhmedov comes right at Weidman. He shoots for a double leg takedown, and I think that's when he gets his first takedown, and see a little bit more explosiveness from Akhmedov in round 2. He's firing more punches. Weidman never really got off his right hand. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it was hurt, but he avoided using his right, whereas Akhmedov was throwing flurries at Weidman. He just never really clipped him that hard in round 2, but he probably won the round, putting it on 1-1. Everyone kind of thought going into round 3. Round 3 again, it was more grappling from Weidman. He gets a trip, which leads to a takedown with about 4 minutes left. And they're battling on the ground, and Weidman transitions into the mount, and he starts going for an arm triangle with about 3 minutes left in the fight. And Weidman just stays on top the entire rest of the fight. He ends up giving up on the arm triangle attempt and starts raining elbows. He stayed in the mount position for the remaining 3 minutes. So he won on the judges' scorecard by unanimous decision. And it's great to see Chris Weidman get a win. He was 1 for 5, so he really needed it. He knew he needed it. He's still a contender for sure. Like I said, my dad is the one who pointed out there was something with his right hand where he wasn't really throwing that as a heavy finishing punch. It was the jabs, the kicks, and the wrestling that he relied on so much, the wrestling. But it worked for him against Akhmedov, who was a tough customer, and it was a unanimous decision. So we'll see who Chris Weidman gets next, how many fights he has left in him. Even after the win, people are saying the guy should retire, so he just can't do anything right even when he wins. People are saying it's not exciting enough. But nevertheless, it was a good fight for him. Good to get on the win column. Maybe not the most entertaining, but definitely good that he got the win. And that was the co-main at 185. Moving on to our main event, it was the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, versus the Boa Constrictor, Alexei Oleinik, at heavyweight. Story of this one at the weigh-in was Derek Lewis cut weight down to 265, the limit for heavyweights, and Oleinik weighed in at 227 himself, so a 38-pound disadvantage. Or you could say maybe he was quicker, maybe he was more lean, but at that weight class just gives such a wide variance. When you come in at 38 pounds lighter than the guy next to you, it's just going to be harder to grapple. They're going to have heavier strikes. They're going to have a more of a granite chin. Just with that extra weight is going to protect them, in my opinion. So Derek Lewis always comes out topped out at the weight class. And then his opponents, when they come in much lighter, I just feel like they're in for trouble. And Alexei Oleinik, in this fight, his game plan was going to the ground, getting a submission, getting Derek Lewis into a bad position, and avoiding trading on the feet. And in round 1, for the most part, he was able to stick to his game plan and have some success. Derek Lewis, right out of the gate in round 1, comes out with a head kick. And I think he just throws that kind of stuff to throw his opponents off guard, to disrupt just a little bit, to gain an advantage where he can start throwing his punches, because he relies on the punches more than anything, but he switches it up with the kicks and later a jumping knee, which we'll get into. But they start with the head kick. They get tied up in grappling early on. Lewis just kind of easily tosses Oleinik to the ground and starts raining shots on him and gets into half guard. And they're fighting. They briefly stand back up. It's got a hold of Lewis's leg, which leads to a takedown for Oleinik. And Oleinik is squeezing him in what they were calling a scarf hold, where he was kind of sideways, almost in a half guard position, but squeezing his neck and his arm together, almost like a seated arm triangle attempt. But the scarf hold was choking out Derek Lewis pretty bad. So bad that he said the squeezing is what made him say he had to shit after the fight. But Oleinik is going for the scarf hold. Lewis tries to get back up, taken back down in the scarf hold again with 1 minute left, and he just lets the time clock kind of gets Lewis out of round 1. And so going into round 2, right out of the gate, Derek Lewis throws a flying knee. Alexei Oleinik also almost had an Americana attempt at the end of round 1 with only 4 seconds left. He gave up in the scarf hold and he switched it up to an Americana, and he had it in really deep. Derek Lewis is known to explode and just get out of submission attempts like that when he is in a bad spot and on his back. But he didn't have to. He was saved by the clock with only 4 seconds left on the Americana attempt. But it was in pretty deep. It looked bad. But yeah, going into round 2, Derek Lewis comes out with the flying knee into the right hook. The right hook lands, really stuns Oleinik, knocks him down, knocked to the ground, about to be knocked out, and Derek Lewis just jumps on top, flurries, gets the finish, gets the ref to come in and split it up. So congratulations on Derek Lewis for this win. It was an exciting fight. I'd really like to see Oleinik get the submission, although I did predict Derek Lewis was going to win the fight. He was the favorite to win the fight and ranked higher. And Alexei Oleinik did well. He almost got several scarf hold chokes, and who knows how close Derek Lewis was to tapping or how much he could really breathe. But they put on an entertaining fight. It was not a sleeper. It went to a finish. So all my picks on this fight card were correct. I went 4 for 4. The only one I abstained from was Akhmedov Weidman. That would have been hard to predict just because one guy was 1-5 going in and one guy was 4-5 going in, and the guy who was 1-5 won. So anyone who picked Weidman, congratulations on that. I picked Lewis, Stewart, Beniel Dariush, and Yana Kunitskaya by decision. So if you got the extra by decision, congratulations on that bet as well. So real quickly, the performance of the night went to Darren Stewart. It went to Gavin Tucker on the undercard, Andrew Sanchez on the undercard, Kevin Holland on the undercard. Not to Dariush because he missed weight. So, getting into the undercard a little bit, and the prelims started out with Irvin Rivera versus Ali Alkaisa. It was hard fought, evenly matched. Alkaisa had a cut nose, took some damage. Both had takedowns and a split decision. They gave it to Rivera, and that was at bantamweight. Next one up was Youssef Zalal versus Peter Barrett, and that was at featherweight, 145. And Barrett, it was his UFC debut, although he was a little bit older at 30-something. Zalal was coming in on a 3-fight win streak, with 2 of those wins being in 2020. He was a big favorite on the card. In round 1, he got a spinning back kick. It was almost a KO. It landed really flush. Zalal almost had a rear naked choke. He had it back for most of round 2. And then Zalal was in a mount and then takes back with a rear naked attempt in round 3, but didn't get the finish. He got a unanimous decision. So he's the first fighter of 2020 to have 3 wins in 2020. So congratulations to Youssef Zalal. I'm sure he'll get a big fight at featherweight after this. Moving on, we had Gavin, the Governor Tucker, versus Justin, the Guitar Hero Janes at featherweight. Gavin, the Canadian, was just coming after him with heavy kicks, heavy punches. Janes was more of a striker. You could tell if he just got the opening, he could have just unloaded with a flurry and got the win, but he was a little bit outmatched with just the variety of striking from Gavin Tucker. In round 1, Janes was missing some punches. He got a submission attempt there on the ground. The shorts came down to Gavin Tucker. You could see like almost somewhat of a camo underwear he was wearing. And it transitioned into an arm triangle attempt. It was just one of the strangest ground sequences. The ref couldn't interrupt it to pull his pants back up. So that was just an interesting one. In the fight, Janes get a big uppercut, but Gavin Tucker survives. Gavin Tucker just puts on a fast pace and just unloading shots, all kinds of kicks and punches, and just really all throughout round 2, unloading quite a bit. And then landing a lot to the face as well. And Tucker in round 3 gets a rear naked choke for the win, so that's why he got a performance of the night. Moving on in the prelims was Andrew El Dirty Sanchez versus Wellington Turman, the prodigy, at middleweight. Sanchez was 8 years older and rocking the mullet. And they were trading some heavy shots. I think both guys were wrestlers, but they were just on the feet, trading back and forth, really swinging for it. And Sanchez finds just a right, almost straight right, just a right cross, and gets the KO victory. So congratulations to Andrew Sanchez at middleweight. And then moving on at lightweight, it was Alexander Munoz versus Nasrat Hakparast. And Munoz had won on the Contender Series. He got an early takedown, didn't get too much with it. Hakparast had really good takedown defense after that, and was just trading the heavier shots. He had the more volume, heavier shots, really good takedown defense. The striking from Munoz was a little labored and telegraphed and only was used to set up his wrestling. He was just trying to wrestle, and Hakparast was able to prevent that and win in the unanimous decision. So moving on was the remade fight in a sense. Kevin Holland was supposed to fight just a week ago. Kevin, the Trailblazer Holland, he's 6'3", going in against Joaquin Buckley, a St. Louis native, which I always root for. As myself, I'm a St. Louis native. And this was at middleweight at 185. Kevin Holland was set to fight recently against Trevin Giles, and Trevin Giles fainted. He said he wanted to fight Ed Herman as a replacement. They couldn't get that to work out. So this card, he fought Joaquin Buckley. It went to the third round. Holland had the reach advantage. Was 4-1 for his last 5. Buckley was throwing combinations and just like going at the body. Had so many body shots cumulatively. And Holland was talking trash all throughout the fight. Buckley just couldn't make it a close fight. He tried to get in the range. He could only just do these flurries to the body, but he had very few headshots and wasn't doing the damage to Kevin Holland. And in the third round, Kevin Holland gets the KO victory over Buckley. And I believe it was just a straight right. So congratulations to Kevin Holland at middleweight. He's a real contender, and with that reach, like Adesanya or John Jones, these guys can be champions. They have the reach advantage, and they're lean in their weight class. They just tend to be really great fighters. They're hard to get in on, and so we'll see who Kevin Holland gets paired up against next. But at being a 6'3" middleweight, he's definitely a big customer to deal with. And the final fight to talk about was Tim the Dirty Bird Means versus Laureano Staropoli. And this one was at welterweight at 170. And Laureano has kind of a flashy striking style. He was known for doing spinning attacks, spinning back fists, spinning kicks. And he needs a little bit of range to set up his style. And Tim Means was just kind of preventing that, getting up close, wasn't allowing him to get the range. Doing a little bit of a dirty boxing and just an up-close pressuring. Staropoli comes out quick in round 2, but Tim Means ends up just starting to land more and more. Tim Means worked the wrestling against the fence in round 3, and in the unanimous decision, Tim Means gets the victory. So I know he was the underdog. Some people had him out on a parlay, and that was a good bet. So congratulations on Tim Means, the veteran in that one. And I just wanted to real quick go over some announced fights that are coming up that we know about. They've talked about Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt for the flyweight championship, and on the same pay-per-view, this would be UFC 255. We'd also see Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia, who just got a victory. So that would be an exciting pair of fights. I know people are saying it's undeserved for Cody Garbrandt to jump the line at flyweight. Is it not a real division? How come someone who's never fought in the division gets a title shot in his first fight? And Cody Garbrandt has also lost several of his past 5 fights. So who knows? He did come off of a KO victory recently, so it's definitely a fun fight. Davison Figueiredo dealt with Joseph Benavidez twice, especially the second fight. So I'd love to see him deal with Cody Garbrandt in the same way. But Cody Garbrandt is always a flashy, exciting fighter who can get KOs as well, so that'll be a fun one. Valentina Shevchenko is the perennial favorite over everyone she's paired up against. She's such a monster. I don't see anyone who can match up against her well. Hopefully Jennifer Maia, with her Brazilian boxing background, can stand up and show up for the fight and have something to say and make it a good one. And she got a submission in a recent fight, so maybe she'll get it to the ground and get some kind of quick submission and shock the world. But that's coming in at UFC 255. A little bit earlier at UFC 254, supposedly we have Robert Whittaker, the former middleweight champ, versus Jared Cannonier. So that would just be bombs thrown and a really exciting matchup. Love to see that one. I know it was scheduled earlier and had to be canceled for some reason, so they're throwing it back. and maybe we'll actually see it at UFC 254. Last one I want to mention is one I saw in the works for an October 10th event, which would be a main event of Marlon Moraes versus Corey Sandhagen. So I just feel like such a great matchup, two really exciting styles, one really up-and-coming fighter in Sandhagen, and one veteran who's right at the top of the weight class with Moraes. Moraes actually beat Jose Aldo, but you couldn't tell with these matchups he's been given. It's like, have fun with this one, buddy. You beat Jose Aldo, you don't get a title shot, you get Corey Sandhagen. So, good luck for Moraes. I'd love to see him get a flashy head kick KO or something like that. But that's all the announced fights. You will be back with KO with Kyle for an upcoming event. This Saturday is UFC 252, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. That is on August 15th. Following that, we'll be doing a forecast and recap episode for the UFC Fight Night of Frankie Edgar versus Pedro Munoz for August 22nd. And then they haven't scheduled more fight nights, or I don't know of more fight nights that between then and UFC 254, which is Khabib versus Gaethje, and October 24th. So between August of the 22nd and October of the 24th, I'm sure they'll be putting on some more fights in those weeks, but they just haven't announced them yet. But thank you all for listening. This has been a recap episode of KO with Kyle. Remember to subscribe, hit like, share, follow us. Thank you for your support. We love doing these recaps for you and the forecast for you as well. So we'll continue to put out the content, and glad you enjoy. All right, peace.